This is the issue, and I am the ghetto man. Today's issue, police encounters and drone complaints. What would you do if a drone complaint was filed against you? Did you know that 90% of all convictions are made by admissions and confessions? More and more drone pilots are encountering police officers and private citizens that are complaining about drones flying in their area. What would you do if a complaint has been filed against you for flying a drone? What would you do if a police officer shows up at your door as a result of that complaint? What would you do if you were approached by an officer or a private citizen complaining about what you're doing while you're flying a drone? Well, these are important questions. Well, I can't answer these questions for you, nor can I give you legal advice. But as for me, this is how I will handle the situation. Okay, so a complaint has been filed against me, and now I have an officer at my door asking questions. What do I do? Well, when a police officer comes to my door asking me questions about my alleged participation in an unlawful drone activity, it is important to remember that the officer is there for one reason and one reason only: to investigate a crime and gather as much evidence as possible to use in a court of law against me. The officer is not there because he or she is my friend. The officer is there to gather evidence, period. I always ask the officer, what is the purpose of the inquiry? See, it's important that I understand the purpose of the inquiry up front. If the officer's there to investigate me, I need to know that before I say anything further. And then I ask the officer, what is he or she going to do to me if I don't answer the questions? I ask these two questions because I want to make sure it is clear as to why the officer is at my door and if I am the focus of an investigation. I need to know that. You see, the moment that you feel, or the moment that I feel, that I'm a target of investigation, my 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment protections kick into play, and I have a right to remain silent and to have counsel present. This is called dropping the exclusionary rule. I inform the officer that I will not answer any questions, including identifying myself, without counsel present. You see, anything that I say or do can and will be used against me in a court of law. I do not have to say anything. I have a right to remain silent. You see, I can't be convicted for something that I didn't say. From that point forward, there were 3 things that I must remember. 1, don't say anything. 2, keep my mouth closed. And 3, shut up! When a police officer comes to my door making inquiry about a drone complaint filed against me, I know why the officer is there. The officer is there to collect information. And I know the officer doesn't know who I am. Most likely, the officer knows nothing about me. The officer doesn't know if I own a drone. The officer doesn't know if I have a drone license. The officer doesn't know if I was flying a drone in the neighborhood. The officer doesn't know if I took a video and or pictures of anything with a drone. The officer doesn't even know if I own a drone with a camera. All the officer has is a complaint alleging that I may have done something illegal with a drone. That's it. The officer is at my door for one reason and one reason only, and that's to find answers to these questions. Questions that I have no obligation to answer, especially when I'm the target of the criminal investigation. Now, pursuant to our criminal justice system, I have the right to remain silent when accused of a crime. I don't have to do or say anything. I do not have to produce any information whatsoever, especially information that can and will be used against me in a court of law. The Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, and I quote, "No person shall be compelled in a criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor to be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It is the responsibility of the state and the person that made the complaint to produce evidence that will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that everything that they allege that I did is provable in a court of law. The burden of proof is on the state, not me. The state must have proof that I own a drone. The state must have proof that I own the drone that was allegedly used to commit a crime. The state must have proof that I was flying the drone at the time the crime was committed. The state must have proof that the drone had a camera, that the camera was capable of taking pictures, that the pictures were actually taken, and I was the person that took the pictures with the camera, and I did so unlawfully. A mere allegation is not proof, nor is it probable cause that would trigger a search warrant. The state has the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt that every alleged crime contained in the complaint is provable in a court of law, and all of this has to be done before the state can formally charge me with a crime. I am under no obligation to prove anything or give them any information that would support any claim against me. Anything that I say or do can and will be used against me in a court of law, and any evidence supplied by me could be used to secure a search warrant of any property connected to the drone. Things like the drone's memory, SD cards, flight data, and computers. Once I admit to anything related to the investigation, I open the door for a search warrant. So if someone claims that I violated their life, liberty, and property and violated their privacy in any way, they must be able to prove that claim, not me. The state must, under all circumstances, conduct its own independent investigation into the matter and cannot, under any circumstances, force the accused, me, to provide that information for them. The same thing stands true if I'm out flying a drone in a public area. When an officer approaches me and asks me, "What are you doing?" at that point, I have become a target of an investigation. Once again, I will ask the officer, what is the purpose of the inquiry? And what is he or she going to do to me if I don't answer the questions? I will inform the officer that I will not answer any questions, including identifying myself without counsel present. Once again, remember, anything that I say or do can and will be used against me in a court of law. At that point, I have a right to drop the exclusionary rule and remain silent and have counsel present. Just like when an officer appears at my door asking me a question, this officer has no idea if what I'm doing is unlawful. We all know that there are a lot of circumstances where flying a drone does not require a drone registration or a license. I'm under no obligation to point that fact out to him, nor do I have to say anything that would suggest that my actions are anything but lawful. It is the officer's job to make sure that determination is done, not me. And when the officer has to make that determination, he has to do it from his or her own independent observation and investigation. First, the officer has to determine that I'm actually flying a drone. I may be doing something else. Then the officer has to determine what type of drone I'm flying, and if the drone I'm flying is a type that has to be registered and/or the operator has to be licensed. The officer has to determine that the drone has a camera and that I'm using the camera unlawfully. The officer has to determine where the drone is exactly located above the ground and that its location is in violation of the law. The officer has to determine what the drone's altitude is and if the altitude is in violation of the law. In a nutshell, the officer has to determine if what I'm doing is unlawful. There are a lot of factors that have to be considered in order to establish probable cause for a citation or arrest. Without probable cause based on the officer's own observation and knowledge, I'm under no obligation to tell him anything, period. To do so could be a confession, witnessing against myself. That's why it's so important that I have counsel present at the time of the interrogation. Now, what have the courts said about my rights to remain silent? Quoting from a Supreme Court case called the Salinas v. Texas, it can be found in 570 U.S. 178. It's a 2013 case. Quote, petitioner's Fifth Amendment claim fails because he did not expressly invoke the privilege against self-incrimination in response to the officer's question. It has long been settled that the privilege generally is not self-executing, and that a witness who desires its protection must claim it. That's very clear. Another case, this is a federal supplement case called United States versus Johnson that comes down to 76 Federal Supplement 538. This goes back to 1947. The privilege against self-incrimination is neither accorded to the passive resistance nor to the person who is ignorant of his rights, nor to one indifferent thereto. It is a fighting clause. Its benefits can be retained only by sustained combat. It cannot be claimed by an attorney or a solicitor. It is valid only when insisted upon by the belligerent claimant in person. And then, of course, the famous case called Miranda versus Arizona can be found at 384 U.S. 436. The court says, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. Now, you see getting the point? If I don't claim my rights, then they are presumed to be waived. Period. I can't later claim that my rights to remain silent was violated after voluntarily answering questions presented to me by an officer investigating a crime. Now, can I? Even if I land my drone in front of the officer has to know the specifics of the drone and whether or not I'm in violation of any local, state, or federal law before the officer can do anything. The officer cannot detain me to conduct further investigation without probable cause or Fourth Amendment warrant. Weighing the drone, as an example, without probable cause or Fourth Amendment warrant could be a violation of my constitutionally protected rights. If the officer orders me to stop what I'm doing, I am in custody, and I can drop the exclusionary rule. If the officer takes my drone without probable cause or a Fourth Amendment warrant, it may be an unlawful search and seizure. In either case, I demand my right to have counsel present and remain silent. This scenario also applies when a private citizen approaches me with the same type of interrogation. A private citizen can witness against me and most likely will. In fact, most complaints that are filed against a drone pilot are done by a private citizen with a bone to pick. Now, if any of us want to put a stop to people and government interfering with the free enjoyment of our hobby and or business, then we all need to grow a pair and stand up for our constitutionally protected inalienable rights. As for me, I'm flying free, baby. Below, I've posted a series of videos on the Bill of Rights so that you can better understand the protections that the U.S. Constitution guarantees. I have also posted a video on the FAA, drone rights, and the Federal Aviation Administration. Is the FAA constitutional? Well, thank you for watching. I am the Ghetto Man. If you're politically correct, then you're legally wrong. And if you're not part of the solution, then by God, you are the problem.